Hi everyone, welcome to episode 2 of the Speckled Red Knits podcast. My name is Julianne. I'm a knitter from Cleveland, Ohio. I also have an Etsy shop called Speckled Red Co., where I sell my handmade project bags. I'm so excited that you're tuning in for another episode. Last week, or 2 weeks ago, I released my first episode, which is a little nerve-wracking, but so many people watched and subscribed and commented, and I was just blown away by the reception. And I'm excited to put out another podcast this week. So last week, we did a little giveaway of one of my project bags. This one right here. It has little wildflowers on it, state wildflowers. That's my logo right there. I have red hair and a lot of freckles, so that's why I call it speckled red. So this is my medium-sized project bag, which is really good for softs or like small shawls. But the only thing you had to do to be entered in the giveaway was subscribe and leave a comment. And the prompt was, what you're doing during quarantine, how craft is helping you during quarantine, what you're working on. And the winner, which was just chosen randomly, was Helen Dawson. So Helen, just send me a message, or I'll send you a message, or we'll get in contact somehow, and I will get this posted out to you. Helen left a really lovely comment about what she was knitting, but she also said that one of her friend's grandmothers recently passed away, and so her friend gave her grandmother's quilting stash, and so she's finishing some of the quilts that were left behind, that were unfinished, to give to the granddaughters so that they could have a quilt that was finished by their grandmother. Partially made by their grandmother, but finished by someone else so that they could still have that, which I thought was so lovely. I've done a little bit of quilting. It's definitely not my forte, but I love looking at all the beautiful quilts that people made, and that's such a special memory. I think quilts are really, really special. All right, so we're going to do another giveaway this week. It's going to be a little different. It's not going to be necessarily knitting related, but it's very important. So when I put out my last episode, it was before, I had filmed it before everything that has happened. So it was before George Floyd was murdered. It was before all the protests, and I didn't really, get a chance to address where I stand on that in my last podcast. And so I just wanted to take a moment on here to talk about, where I stand and what I'm trying to do to be better moving forward as an ally. I am a straight white woman, and every day I benefit from white privilege. White privilege that is really, really harmful today to other people that don't benefit from that. Our current system, and when I say system, I mean, our government, our policies, socioeconomic policies, just everything like that. The system today inherently benefits, people who are white over anyone else. And that has created a lot of problems. It's a system that was, fundamentally built to disproportionately favor certain people over others. And that is really evident, especially today, when we look at police brutality, when we look at everything. And, that's really come to light, and I think it's important, and I have a lot of work to do myself to educate myself about these issues and, how to unpack that and just be better moving forward. I think we all have a lot of work to do. And I think one of the best ways to do that is to just learn as much as you can, and work with what you've learned going forward. There's been a lot of literature that's been recommended lately, and I wanted to do a giveaway of some of those books. So I have a couple books today. I have a couple that I'm still waiting on, so we'll do that giveaway for those two, hopefully next podcast if they're here. But the first book I'm going to give away is called Check Your Privilege. It is a book by a few different ladies. They all contributed to it. But this is a great book about kind of just unpacking your privilege. There's also a great online workbook that goes along with this. I think the workbook is actually free, but it's meant to accompany the book. So I am going to give this book away, and I'm also going to give this one away. It's called So You Want to Talk About Race. And what I really like about this book is that it acknowledges that this is an uncomfortable topic for people to, bring up to their family and friends and address in everyday life. And this book really, gives you the tools and the verbiage to do so. I also think that going forward, voting with your dollars and voting in general is important. But if you're trying to find some of these books, I know a lot of them are sold out on Amazon. There are lots of independent bookstores that you can give your money to. There are lots of Black-owned bookstores that you can give your money to. I actually got both of these books from bookstore.com, where you can choose what bookstore you're actually purchasing the book from. So there's a great list out on Instagram right now of Black-owned bookstores. So I just picked a different bookstore for each book that I bought from that list. And, you're educating yourself, but then, you're also supporting, independent booksellers, and you can support different groups of people with your dollars. So, yeah, I'm really excited to give these books away in the comments. If you want to be entered, all I ask is that you subscribe and you leave a comment just telling us about, a resource that you found helpful during this time. Something, that spoke to you, maybe an organization that you donated some money to that you found really valuable. I think that, everyone has a lot of work to do, and being educated about these issues about Black Lives Matter, this incredible movement is important. And if we all pool our resources, I think that we would all have a really good base to get started from. If you watched last week's episode, I guess it was 2 weeks ago now, but if you watched the last episode, you saw me talking about my Vertices Unite shawl by Stephen West. When I first recorded that episode, I did record it more than 2 weeks ago, so if you're wondering how I knit this shawl so fast, it's because there was a pretty big time lapse. I think when I showed it, I only had the one section done, but now it is finished. So I'm going to probably insert a better picture of it so that you can see it in all its glory, because it is pretty long and you're probably not going to be able to see it super well like this, but it is done, and I am so excited that I knit this. I think I was a little apprehensive to knit it for a long time because you have to come up with 5 colors. And I didn't want to come up with 5 colors, but I talked about in the last episode that I used the Woolberry Fiber Co., her new Cornmeal base, which you can't get until August because it was a new line and she only had so many skeins done. It was just kind of not a test run, but it was just, I think she just did a smaller batch to see how it was received, and it all sold out immediately. So let me tell you what the colors are again. So this color is called Rhubarb Pie. This lighter pink is called Peachy Keen. This color in the middle is called Moab. This pale green, I think, is called Pine. And then this really dark green is actually not part of the Woolberry yarn. I had another pink skein that I tried to buy. I was part of the update, and I was carjacked. So I had to pick something new, and I picked, I believe it's called the House Fingering Base from Primrose Yarn, which is, I think it's a Merino Shetland mix, and one of the fibers is darker, and so all of those colors kind of have like a darker tone because it's over dyed on like gray fleece. So I wanted to stick with like another yarn that was non-superwash, just to kind of go with like the farm yarn feel. I am so glad that I finally got around to knitting this shawl, because it's just like, it's a really great shape. It is big. Stephen West, I think people call them schlankets because they're shawls, but they're also sometimes really big, that they're almost like blankets. But I like that because I do wear my shawls around my neck, but also just like during the day, if I'm cold, I usually wear them like this, like I'm from the 1700s. So what I like about it is that the depth is nice. It kind of comes down to like your, you know, like your waistline, and it's not too long. It's just a really neat shape. This definitely is a shawl that needs to be blocked. So what you do is all of these pieces are they're not knit separately. You knit the pieces kind of individually, and then you pick up stitches to knit the section. So what you end up doing is you knit this pink and white section, you knit first, and it's the longest section, and then you pick up the stitches along the edge for this section, and then you pick up more for this section, and then these stitches get picked up and knit. This is okay, so they're like 6 sections. So they're not separate pieces, but they are like knit individually. So you can't do an incorporated I-cord edging. So at the end, what you do is you pick up a ton of stitches to do the I-cord, which I love. You can kind of see the I-cord. It gives you such a nice edge. It just looks really finished and professional. But what happens is, because it's picked up, it kind of like scrunches the shawl up. So it definitely needs a good blocking. I don't know why I was so late to the game to get those Knitter's Pride blockers, where it has like the plastic piece up top with 5 pins in it. But if you're not using those, I would seriously consider getting some, especially if you do shawl knitting, because let me tell you, it is the worst to put like 50 pins into a shawl to pin it and then have to unpick all of those. Those Knitter's Pride blockers are awesome. It takes like a quarter of the time to block with it. So that's what I used to block this, and it just turned out really well. It's very warm and cozy and really squishy, and I'm just so happy with it. All right, so my next finished object is not necessarily a super recent finished object. I want to say I finished it in April. I didn't show it on the last podcast because it was already done, but my shawl was my only like technically finished object. So I just wanted to show this one because it pretty recently came off the needles. I actually haven't been able to wear it because I finished it in April. So I kind of finished it and blocked it, and it's just gonna sit in my closet until probably November, but I wanted to talk about it anyway. So this sweater is called the Pearl Code. It's by Elizabeth Kramer. It is a DK weight pattern. I think the needle size I used was a size 7. The yarn I used is called Farm Twist by Madeline Tosh, and the colorway is called Plout, P-L-O-U-T, and it's just this really lovely purple. It has like little specks of kind of gold in it. Yeah, I'm really happy with the color. When I first started knitting, maybe it was just at the top, but it felt like there was a lot of white in it. I definitely think that evened out. I don't always like to wear like white or ivory just because I'm already really pale, and I think it just kind of washes me out. So I was worried about the color at first, but it definitely, as I knit with it, it kind of evened out. I did alternate skeins on this, so I did the helical knitting, or helical knitting. I think it's just called helical knitting. But basically, you just do a bunch of slip stitches, it's like every 3, it has to do with three stitches, but it allows you to alternate skeins. So when you're knitting with hand-dyed yarn, you know, even if it's all the same dye lot, you can get like flashing. I guess you can't really see it that much in this sweater, but like maybe like some of the darker spots, you can see it like pools a little bit. So if I had an alternated skeins, there would be like really big pools of color, which, I mean, some people like that. I personally know that I would be bothered by, like, I would probably knit it and say, oh, it's fine, it won't bother me, and then I would finish it and immediately like rip it all out because it secretly would bother me. So I do alternate skeins. I do alternate them all through the sleeves. Here, right here, I guess you see it more in the sleeves. You can see that it's a little bit, there are areas where it's lighter. And that's what I was worried about. But in the sweater overall, it looks fine. So when you knit the sweater, there's actually not a pattern for these like garter ridges. Elizabeth Kramer in the pattern includes like a little dictionary where it's basically how you can spell out letters in Morse code, but like through dots and dashes of like these purl bumps, you could spell out things. And I wasn't really that ambitious. Some people do really cool things with it. But so mine doesn't mean anything. I just did it when I felt like it. So you're knitting in the round. So you just, every now and then you do, you know, like a couple of stitches of knit stitches or purl stitches so that you can get those bumps. But yeah, I'm super happy with the sweater, and I can't really tell you about wearing it because I haven't actually put it on myself because it's been too hot, but in November maybe I'll get a better gauge of how well it fits, but I really like it. And I'm excited to wear it in the fall. It's always nice to knit sweaters in warmer weather and just put them away because there's no rush to finish them. I know I talked about my Birkin sweater on the last podcast, and I haven't touched that since. It doesn't really need that much done with it. I just need I need to finish the ribbing on the bottom, which is like 1.5 inches, so it's hardly anything, and then knit the sleeves, and they're 3/4 length sleeves. But because it's so warm, I don't really have the motivation to finish knitting it. It's pretty much the only time that I don't monogamously knit is in the summer, just because there's no rush to get it done. Once it's cold, I do really feel that drive to like finish a sweater as quickly as I can so I can wear it before the season's over. But in the summer, I kind of just knit whatever I feel like, and when it gets colder, that's when I pick it up. So as soon as I finished my first Vertices Unite shawl, I cast on another one. I recently was going through my stash, and I have all of these like really special skeins of hand-dyed yarn that I don't want to say they don't go with other things, but they're just really special, and I didn't want to use them in the wrong project. So I was pulling out a bunch of these skeins because I have this box of hand-dyed yarn about like just kind of random skeins that I didn't buy for any reason otherwise they were beautiful, other than because they were beautiful. And so they don't always go together. But I was pulling skeins off and I found 5 that I really liked together. So I immediately cast on another Vertices Unite. I feel like people say all the time, like, oh, I would totally knit this pattern again, and they don't, but I do. I knit patterns all the time that I've knit before. I think it's just because I really knit for myself, and I knit to have things in my wardrobe. So if I like something, I'm going to knit it again because I just want to have it in my wardrobe, and I know that it looks good, and it goes with things that I have. So I am knitting this again. So I'm just starting that first section again. Actually, I think this is the right side. So this is the big, that big pink and white striped section that I showed you on my other one. So it's the largest section of the shawl, so it takes a little while. So the 2 colors I'm using in this section are this one. How beautiful is that? I love just looking at this yarn in the skein. It's called Cactus Flower. It's by Fiber for the People. When I found her yarn, I just like stalked her updates. Probably 2 years ago, I was really into her yarn. I still am, but I've tried to stop buying like random single skeins of hand-dyed yarn because, like I said, I have that box of yarn that I just kind of look at. But so this is called Cactus Flower. Let's just really look at that. Isn't that so beautiful? I just love it. There's so many colors in it. And the next color is Tea Leaves. It's by Vine. I bought this a while ago. I probably bought this 2 years ago. So these are the 2 colors that I'm using for that striped section. It doesn't come off like it's super striped, I think because this color has some lighter sections that kind of blend with the tea leaves. So let's see. You can kind of see the striped portion. But it's really subtle and I love it. So let me show you my other colors because I'm also really excited about them. I just had these sitting out on the floor for like a month. And I have yarn to do another Vertices Unite that's kind of more muted, like pale pinks and whatnot. And I was going to cast that one on, but I was just so excited to do this one. And it's summer, so you know, I'm not gonna like wear it a ton until the fall. So I have time to knit both of them, and I just really wanted to do this one first. So another color that I'm using is called Match Head, which is also by Fiber for the People. I have a lot of random skeins of her yarn, but this yarn is, I think this is how I found her yarn. Look how beautiful that is. This is just her single space, but I just can't get over how beautiful this skein is. It's like the skein is a work of art. So I am excited to finally put this skein to good use. The next one I'm using is by Junk Yarn. This also is just like a beautiful, it's almost tonal and then it has those speckles, but it's called Live, L-I-V. It's also a single space. And then the next skein I have is by Olan. This is called Middle of Nowhere, and it's just this really gorgeous green with like these pops of pink. I mean, it's just so beautiful. I love Olan. Her yarn color, like her colorways are just so beautiful, and she's an Irish dyer, and I just have such a soft spot for Ireland in my heart. I studied abroad there, and I'm probably going to talk about that every podcast. It was such a special experience. So I love her yarn and I have a lot of it. And so I'm excited to finally use this skein because it's just really unique and I was having a hard time like finding a way to use it. So here are those 3. Let me show these all to you so you can kind of see them. I just love this palette. It's kind of like a rainbow, but not quite. I just think they're gonna knit up so nicely together. So I'm so excited to knit this shawl. All right, so my next work in progress, I started back in March, I think. This is The Weekender. It's by Andrea Mowry. I think everyone has knit this pattern before. Mine looks a little different. So I chose to do the stockinette facing out. I know that the pattern calls for the reverse stockinette to be the right side, but I don't know. I've tried to be okay with that, but it feels wrong to me. And I don't know why it bothers me, but so think I'm going to choose to have the stockinette side out. I also omitted the faux seam detail down the middle. I don't know. I didn't like the straight line popping out. I don't know. It looks nice on other people, but I feel like it would just bother me, so I didn't include the faux seam. So really all I have right now is like this body tube. You knit it bottom up because the top part is a 3 needle bind off, so you knit the front and the back into separate pieces once you get to the armhole. I actually really like the way that fits on your body. It just like, it hangs really nicely. There's this one cardigan pattern that I knit all the time. I think I've knit it 4, maybe 5 times, but it uses a 3 needle bind off at the shoulders, and it fits so well. So I love the way that those hips of sweaters fit. So that's why I chose the pattern. The yarn that I'm using is by Noro. I don't remember what the name of it is. I think it's discontinued. So I actually bought it from Webs back in March. I bought a lot of yarn in March. I guess I was worried that there would be like wool shortages because of coronavirus. So I bought a lot of yarn. I can't really explain my rationale, but at the time it seemed like a good idea. So I have a lot of yarn right now. So I'm pretty sure this is discontinued, but it is by Noro, and I know the fiber content is kind of a mismatch. I think it has silk in it and wool and something else. I think there's mohair in it because there's kind of like a halo. But it's just like a really neat color. I think the colorway is called Songbird. I really wanted this yarn. Oh, it has like some reddish pink spots. It's really beautiful. It's like a neutral but not, which I love. I love neutrals that are neutral but like a little bit different. This yarn came in a colorway called Santana that was like neutral but also like had all these rainbow nubs in it. So that was the color I really wanted, but I do like this one quite a bit. So I started knitting this in March, and I haven't come back to it because I'm worried about the size. So I did swatch for this. I swatched for it, and I think you were supposed to knit it on size 9 needles, and my swatch came out too big. I think this is technically considered a bulky weight, but it's fluffy, so you can knit it at a smaller gauge and the fabric is still fine. So I went down a needle size and I re-swatched, and the swatch was fine. But now, like that I've knit it, I feel like it's huge. So I don't know if you can see it. Like, look at the bottom. It feels big. And there's supposed to be a lot of positive ease. I didn't want that much positive ease. I think it called for like 10 inches of positive ease, and I only really wanted 5. So I did measure, and I don't know what happened. It feels huge. The thing is, when you knit a sweater with a 3 needle bind off, it gives you a drop shoulder. So what ends up happening is you knit the bottom, and then you knit the front and back in separate pieces. And so it's basically just the shaping are like, it turns to be like 2 squares on either side, and they get seamed. So the shoulder from the body comes out to like right here. So you get a lot of the body up, especially up top, ends up in the sleeve. So even though it feels big, it usually doesn't turn out that way. So I don't know. I'm just kind of torn on what to do. If I should keep going or if I should rip it out. I don't know. don't really want to rip it out, but I don't know. It just seems big. And because it's a heavier weight yarn, like I don't want it to have like a ton of positive ease and then it looks like a potato sack once it's on my body. So I don't know. I'm kind of torn. I think I need to put this on waist yarn and put it over my body and decide. I think it's too big though. I think I measured and like, this is too big. We're just gonna leave it there. I need to rip it out. I'm realizing that now, especially compared to, I'm looking at the sweater that I knit that is much smaller. So, okay, I need to rip it out. I'm gonna rip it out. But at least I can show you this and encourage everyone who's facing a similar moral battle to do the same. So my next work in progress is not quite cast on, but the yarn has been caked up. So I'm gonna call it an almost work in progress, but I'm just really excited about this yarn. Let me just show you a quick picture of it. So it's kind of this goldish green with kind of, I think they're like plum speckles. It also has like these little peach bits. Anyway, I love it. And I also love it because the name is Deathly Hallows. This is again by Madeline Tosh. I love Madeline Tosh yarn. I originally heard about Madeline Tosh when I first started knitting, probably in high school. I think there was a Pearl Soho pattern that used Madeline Tosh yarn. So I knew about it, but I couldn't afford it. And I mean, even now it's still pricey. But back in the fall last year in 2019, they were changing ownership. So now they're owned by Jimmy Bean's Yarn, which is a yarn store in Nevada. And so they were changing owners, and so they had a huge sale of all of their current stock, and I bought a lot. So the sweater I showed you at the beginning, I bought when they had that big sale, and this was another sweater's quantity of the same yarn that I bought. This is, again, the Farm Twist. You can see it in the skein too, but see that little peach bit? I just think that's so beautiful, and I love the green. I am just really excited about this yarn. So when what happened was they were supposed to just sell all of their current stock, and then they oversold it, and so they had to wait for all of their yarn to come back in stock. So I think I ordered this yarn last year in September, and I don't think and it was like the beginning of September, and I don't think I got it until like December. So I was anxious to get it, and I acquired more yarn in that time when I was waiting for it. So I haven't knit with all of it yet. So I'm finally getting through it. I did, at the same time, I ordered a bunch of like sock yarn too. But I just find their colorway so just like sophisticated, and I think this is like a fun color, but it's also very wearable. I think all of their colors, even if they are, like tonal and speckled, that they're all very wearable, which I love. And I think they all go together very well. They have a lot of different tones of solids. So they have, maybe they have like 5 like cream colored yarns, and they all have different undertones to them. So it's really easy to find like a color palette that works with like, you can have a skein and you can find like the proper tone, like gray skein to go with it very easily for Madeline Tosh. So I think they have since scaled down the amount of colors that they offer. They still offer a ton. I think they have like 100 colors that they offer. I love their fingering weight base, the Tosh Merino Light. It's a single base. I love the singles. but it's so soft. It's like the softest single base I've ever felt. And so I love balayage. And with this yarn, I'm going to knit, okay, I'm going to put the name of it up on the screen because the designer is French-Canadian, and I know I'm going to say the name wrong, but I have knit this sweater before. I knit it in House of a la Mode in her, I think it was called Andromeda. So it's like a dark purple, but it has all these like rainbow speckles on it, but it's very understated, and it's so pretty. It reminds me of stained glass. So this sweater is kind of, it has those pearl bumps in it, kind of like the pearl coat sweater did, but the neck is a little bit wider. And so it's like every 4 rows you do a stripe. So you knit, like 3 knit rows, and then you do a pearl round. So you get that, like the pearl bumps in it. And then the hem is a split hem, and it's rounded. So you do short rows along the hem to get like this really neat like split. I think they call it a shirt tail hem, but the sweater fits really well, and I love it. And I think it just like showcases hand-dyed yarn really beautifully. Whenever I knit a sweater with hand-dyed yarn, I don't want it to be too fussy, just because like this is so beautiful, and I just want that to be the star of the show, not the pattern really. So I like simpler pullovers for hand-dyed yarn, and I'm really excited to knit that sweater in this yarn. So this is not really a work in progress, but it will be by next week. And the yarn is ready to be a work in progress. So I'm really excited to get started on that sweater. So I've recently made some stash acquisitions. I normally don't buy yarn all that often. What I tend to do is in the fall, I tend to buy a lot of yarn, like sweaters quantities. I like having yarn picked out for projects and just like ready to go. So I like to buy it kind of all at the same time. So I think that's kind of what I'm doing right now, or at least I'm telling myself that's what I'm doing. But my first stash acquisition are these 3 skeins from Primrose Yarn. Let me just hold these up for you. So she was recently discontinuing some of her bases. So this is the Marquess. Yep, I don't know. But it is an MCN DK base. So it is 80% superwash merino, 10% nylon, 10% cashmere. So this is super soft. This color is called Kiss Me. It's very forward yarn. It's like this peach with kind of a bunch of different colored speckles. It's really beautiful. This color is called Cheeky. Again, it's like that peach color. And then this color is called Moonstone. And it's just this really lovely purple with kind of like greenish splotches. But I thought these all went together pretty well. And I know there are a lot of DK weight shawls that use like 3 or 4 skeins. So I have 3 that all go together. So I just need 1 more, I think, to do a shawl. So that's an option. Jordan, I'm just going to keep going through these instead of doing separate clips.
Okay.
So my next stash acquisition is the skein of yarn from Nomadic Yarns. Here's her tag. She dyes self-striping sock yarn. She has a lot of Harry Potter colorways. I don't know if anyone has been following in the news, but J.K. Rowling has said a lot of kind of crappy stuff lately. Okay, it's really crappy. But she is discontinuing some of her Harry Potter colorways. So I just love this color, and it's called Diagon Alley. And you can see a lot of pictures of her yarn on her Instagram page. So this will stripe up in a sock. And yeah, I think the colors are just really pretty. You can kind of see how it stripes. Well, you can see the colors. But it does look really beautiful knit up. And so I think I'm hoping that she's just going to rename her colorways, which I totally understand, instead of discontinuing them, because she obviously put in a lot of hard work to make those colors, and they're really beautiful. So keep your eyes out on her page for maybe some new colorway names coming, or maybe just new colorways in general. But I am super excited to have this this color. I've wanted it for a while, and I'm happy to add it to my stash. So my next and last yarn acquisition is this beautiful yarn by Mustache Yarn. So she does self-striping sock yarn as well. This colorway is called, I think it's called Rocky Mountain. She did a whole series last year that was like yarn colorways inspired by national parks. So I feel like it might be Appalachian Trail or Rocky. I really don't remember. I wound it up as soon as I got it because I was really excited. So she dyes yarn, so like it's sock yarn and it's self-striping, but the way she does it is that the skein that you buy is actually split into 2 different skeins, so that just like that, so that both of the skeins start exactly at the same color, so you get 2 socks that are a perfect pair, which is kind of cool. It doesn't look the way that it knits up in the skein. Like the striping is really beautiful. It looks a little bit like the colors are kind of random in the skein, but if you go to her Instagram page, she has a shot of these socks, and it's beautiful. It's kind of like a rainbow, just without a color, and it's like areas of it kind of, they fade really nicely. It's kind of like a gradient. So her yarn is really beautiful. It's hard to get. This was actually a pre-order for this colorway that I think she did maybe back at the beginning of May, and I thought it would take a long time to get here, and I think it got here like the next week. So I got it a lot sooner than I thought, and I'm excited to knit up some socks. So in addition to getting some new sock yarn, I bought a new pair of sock needles. I normally only have 2 pairs of sock needles, so I knit them on a size 1 needle, and I only have 2 pairs because my rationale is that if I only have 2 pairs, I can't like cast on that many and not finish them. So it's my tactic to avoid second sock syndrome. And I have that pink sock that I showed last week that's still in the needles that I haven't worked on at all. And I have another sock that I started like a year ago that's like kind of at the heel stage that I also haven't finished. And I should finish it, but like I have all this other sock yarn that I want to use now. And I don't want to take the needles out of any of them. So another stash acquisition that I recently made were another pair of sock knitting needles. I knit my socks using the magic loop method, where you use a really long circular needle. So I like to use the Chow needles. I used to not really be into knitting needles. Like I just used whatever was most convenient. Sometimes I would just like go to Joann's if I didn't have the right needle size and get the Clover bamboo ones, which were fine. I mean, like I still have them and I still use them. I have a couple sets of the Knit Picks, like they're wooden interchangeable needles, which are great. I started knitting socks last summer. I didn't really knit socks before, about a year ago, and I started knitting them with the Addy sock rocket needles, and it was such a bad experience. I mean, I know the needles are kind of meant to be used for sock knitting, but I just found that, if you're doing the circular or the magic loop method with them, the cable just ends up kinking so much. And I would like soak them in hot water and, try and like pull the kinks out. And it wouldn't do anything. And it would always go back to being like coiled up. And I hated it. They were so difficult to use. And I found these Chalgu ones. I don't know if I heard about it somewhere or if they were just like what was available on Amazon. I do have a bad habit of getting my knitting needles on Amazon because they have all the Chalgu ones there. But what's really unique about the Chalgu needles is that the cable is a stainless steel like knit cord, and then it's coated in nylon, and so the actual cable has no memory, so it's impossible, like it doesn't kink, it's impossible. So like even if you have like a project shoved in a project bag for like 2 months because you forgot about it, like when you pull the needle out, it doesn't kink at all, but it's still firm, like it still has, like you don't want it to be completely lax, like you want the cord to have like some structure, and it definitely does. And the surface of the cord is very slick, so it doesn't drag at all. And what I really like is that the tips are sharp, but not pointy, like they're not gonna hurt your finger. I think like the Haya sharps, people complain sometimes that even like they like that they're really sharp, but they also can give you like little marks on your fingers if you push on them too much. And the metal is actually, it's kind of like a brushed metal surface, so it still has like a little bit of slickness, but it's not super slick, which is like something I didn't like about knitting with metal needles. I just found that like the stitches would fall off all the time, so I pretty much only use Chalgu needles now. Sometimes if I'm knitting with like a really slick fiber, I do go back to my wood needles. And if I don't have like a needle readily available, I just use my wood needles. But I have the Chalgu interchangeable set. I think the set that I have goes from a size 2 up to a size 13 maybe. But it is a little bit of an investment, but they are seriously like the best needles. So if you're on the hunt or you just want to try out some new needles, like this is the best. I don't really endorse knitting needles very often, but I love these Chalgu needles. So I wouldn't really call what I'm about to show you stash acquisition. But I recently got into doing some natural dyeing. I don't imagine doing this much more than just for fun, but I remember like maybe a year ago, it was a really big thing to do some dyeing with avocado pits and skins. They give you a really lovely pink color, and I eat avocado toast basically every day for breakfast. I know that's a little fancy, but it's good and it's easy. And so I always have a lot of avocado pits and skins around. So I save them for a little bit and I try to make some dye. And I'm not gonna lie, dyeing with avocados I think is a little bit tricky. I did dye 2 skeins and I ended up over dyeing them because the color I got was just really pale. I think from what I've read since then is that if you want to make like a really strong avocado dye, ideally the color that you'll get is kind of like a blush pink. You can get like a more saturated pink too, but it's kind of like that millennial pink, which I love so much. So if you want to get like a really good avocado dye, you have to extract it over several days. So you have to like turn it on the heat, turn it off, like let it sit overnight, turn it back on, because I guess a lot of the pigment, especially in the pits, takes just a long time to come out. And I didn't do that the first time, but I was kind of bitten by the bug, and I had bought some blank yarn to do some dyeing, and so I've been dyeing up some yarn. So I have 3 skeins right here to show you. All right. So this skein right here, I dyed with marigolds. The one in the middle was dyed with marigolds as well, and then over dyed with a little bit of madder, so it would be kind of an orange. And then this one on the end was dyed with madder exclusively. So this one, the marigold one, I just simmered whole marigold flowers. Actually, I think they were calendula flowers. It's they're similar to marigolds, but I don't think you get as dark of a dye from it. It was really hard for me to find like a big quantity of dried marigolds online, so I just bought marigold seeds, and they're like a really dark yellow marigold. They're almost red. So I'm hoping that I can manage to grow those and try to dye with them again, because I saw some people on Instagram who dyed with their homegrown marigold flowers, and you get like this beautiful, like really deep golden yellow. This is still lovely. It's just pale. I did try leaving one in overnight just to see if the color would get darker, and it really didn't get much darker. But yeah, this is a lovely yellow. This one was the original dye that I used on this one was avocado dye, and I really didn't get pink from it. I just kind of got like a light brown. So I ended up over dyeing it with marigold dye. And then since both of the skeins were kind of the same color, even though one had sat longer, I wanted one of them to be different. And so when I dyed with madder, I kind of just stuck this in for maybe like 3 minutes just to give it more of like an orange color. And then this one I dyed with madder as well. If you're not familiar, madder is a flower that grows, and you dig up the roots and you let the roots dry, and you get like a really gorgeous red dye from it. So this one I only let sit in the dye pot for maybe half an hour. I have another skein that it's just not dry yet, but I let it sit in the dye for about 2 days, so it's a really deep red. With all of these dyes, because this is just like 100% non-superwash merino wool, it's actually really soft and lovely. But because it's an animal fiber, you do have to mordant it before you dye. And what I use and what most people use is just alum. So alum is a food additive that you typically use when you pickle or can things, and it like adds crispness, like especially if you're doing pickles. You don't want mushy pickles, you add just a little bit of alum. So what you do is you just boil maybe like 2 tablespoons of alum powder, which you can get pretty much anywhere, and you let your wool soak in the water for about an hour, just like on a gentle simmer, and then you can dye with it. And what that does is it allows the pigment to stick better and for the fiber to actually absorb the pigment. So all of these skeins are mordanted beforehand. So I have a darker red skein that I'm adding. And then I also have a skein that's still wet that I dyed with red onion skins. So when you dye with red onion skins, you get, the dye looks brown, but then what it actually turns out to be is kind of like a swampy green. It's really lovely. It kind of looks like that Madelinetosh yarn I showed earlier. That's kind of the color you get, which is really neat. If you want to dye with onion skins, but you're wondering how do you ever get enough onion skins to dye with, I'm gonna let you in on a little life hack. So we were at the store the other day and we needed to buy an onion, and I wanted a lot of onion skins. So what I did was I picked out an onion that we were going to buy anyway. And if you have a grocery store that has a loose onion bin, all of those onion skins like fall off in the bin, and they're just there and they like get thrown away. So what I did was I just went through and like picked up the fallen onion skins and just added them to my bag. I mean, like, the bag gets weighed, I guess. So like you're still paying for it, but they don't weigh very much and they would just get thrown away anyway. But I got so many onion skins doing it this way. Like it would have taken me forever to save this many onion skins. So if you want to try dyeing with onion skins, which I recommend because you actually get from like white onions, you get kind of a yellow dye, and from the red onions, you get a really nice green dye. And it's really easy. I think it's one of the easiest. Well, I don't really know that much, but if you're trying to get dye from vegetables or plants, I think it's super easy to do it with onions. So if you want to give that a try, definitely just like grab a couple onion skins the next time you buy an onion at the store. So I have these 3 colors right now. Like I said, there's going to be a darker red and like a greenish yellow. I think I'm going to end up making mini skeins out of them and making little sets and putting them in my shop. So if you're interested in like a fun naturally dyed rainbow, check out my shop sometime soon. I had a lovely time today talking to you all about knitting and yarn and just fiber goodness. I really don't have a fiber community that's accessible to me in my area, and especially with quarantine, everyone is, so distanced and apart right now, and it's just really lovely to get on here and talk about my knitting and read your comments, and I'm just so happy that everyone's enjoying the podcast because I'm really enjoying making it. I hope to have more finished objects, or at least works in progress, to show to you next week. Just a reminder that you can find me on Instagram at @SpeckledRedCo. That's all one word, all lowercase. You can find me on Etsy as Speckled Red Co. If you're looking for me on Etsy, just type my shop name into the Google search bar, because if you type it in on the Etsy search bar, you'll never find it. They have a really weird algorithm. So I'll link that all below. I am on Ravelry, but I don't post anything. My Ravelry username is jmore87. So I do post a lot just in like my saved patterns. So if you want to see like what I'm interested in knitting or what I've knit, you can see that. But I definitely need to get better at using Ravelry. But I'll link that all below. And please remember that if you want to be entered in the giveaway for some of the literature this week, to leave your comment below about a resource that you found useful during this time of social change, and anything that you found useful to help us all do this really important work. I'm so excited to have talked to you today, and I look forward to our next podcast. All right, happy knitting.